Hey, Discern listeners, it's time for me to react to your comments from my videos from last week. Let's get to it. The Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial. I got into that. And Kat says, loving the conversation around PTSD. I have medical-related PTSD from being chronically ill, and it's very hard to explain to people what it's like. But I truly feel terror even getting my blood drawn. Well, Kat, I actually suffered from a mild version of medical-related PTSD as well, and I can attest to the terror in my body when I pre-recovery. I actually, as a therapist, treat people with PTSD, and so I actually conducted treatment on myself, which it is possible to do that. You just have to have a graduated exposure regimen and habituation, which happened, and now I can have my blood drawn. And Kat, if you want to find a therapist that can help you with that, you want to find someone that specializes in exposure therapy, that understands the principles, and can walk you through the steps, and it almost always works. That, especially if you really see it through and you have a good guide. It's not complicated, actually. There's a false notion, and I used to kind of have this, I guess, and it feels right, that the terror that you feel about having your blood drawn or any sort of medical procedure, it feels like, how could you possibly not be afraid of it? You know, it just feels like this is how the world is. Other people aren't afraid of it, but I have absolute terror. It will never work for me. And that isn't usually true. I have worked with many people, again, including myself, where, again, you have a graduated exposure to habituate, and it happens where your body just no longer has the reaction anymore, but you have to have an evidence-based treatment protocol that you go through. And yeah, so whatever phobia y'all have out there, even in relationships, you might have a phobia against rejection or a phobia against criticism. Those are all also habituatable potentially. So, I hope you can get help for that. Because with me, with my medical related PTSD, it was often not a problem because I didn't have to go to the doctor very often. But when you get older, or for some of us when we're younger, we have to go to the doctor more often, and we need medical attention, we need medical help. And if our phobia is getting in the way, our PTSD is getting in the way, then we're not going to get the help that we need, right? And it's important to get the help that you need. Amy says, Dr. Honda, do you take comfort in computers analyzing data and spitting out a diagnosis, or do you trust humans for that? Right, so in the Amber Heard, Johnny Depp trial, I was talking about how in forensic psychology, and also just for all mental health people, they will sometimes use these measures, such as the MAPI-2, that you feed the data into a computer and it spits out the results. And if I gave the impression that one would diagnose directly from that, or the computer literally diagnoses you, then that was wrong, because that's not what happens. To diagnose, particularly in a forensic evaluation, because the individual, like Amber, is not a willing participant. And so you don't have the luxury of trusting what the subject is saying. So you have to piece together a lot of different data to come to a diagnosis. So, but even if someone was compliant and you could bank on the responses being accurate, the computer never diagnoses. It's a guide. And so, yeah. Ben and Mahogany. Linda says, can we give Dr. Kirk and Ms. Stacy their flowers for these wildly regular uploads? I started watching with the first Love is Blind, and continuing to work through the panty has been easier with Dr. Kirk leading by example. So panty, is that the pandemic? Are you Australian or Filipino, maybe? I find that Australians and Filipinos love to create nicknames for things that are adorable. And so, like, what's it? McDonald's is it Macca's in Australia? There's all these really great Australian terms. Anyway, so Yeah, regular uploads. Yeah, me and Stacy work really hard to make sure that the content is flowing. It's hard work. I mean, it's not like digging a ditch, so it's, not that hard. And I gotta be on my mental game. I have various different ups and downs over the day, and so I gotta, optimize my body and my mind and my time so that I can do all this stuff. Since Stacy actually, by the way, she's the one who actually goes through the comments and tells me which one to react to. So she's seen all these, she sees all the comments. She sees more comments than I do. Sometimes I'll go to the video and actually look at the comments, but I'm always like hoping that I'm not triggered by some sort of criticism. Constructive criticism I'm always fine with, but some people can be really hurtful, and I'm such a creature of habit. I think I got it from my dad. My dad started working at Boeing at the age of 21 or something, and worked until he retired in his 60s, and then continued to kind of work for Boeing after that, even though he was retired on a part-time basis. Same job, same building, same desk, I'm guessing. He was a commercial artist. Actually, I'll show a picture right here of him at his desk, and then I'll show a picture of him. He actually designed the Angola Airlines logo. So he was an artist for Boeing. And this is back when you didn't have computers, so you had to cut everything with X-Acto knives or actually hand draw it, and then you would take a picture of it, and then that would become the basis for the publication. So it was a very complicated process back then. But anyway, why am I mentioning that? Anyway, because for me, once I commit to something I've been doing the podcast for 14 years, and every once in a while, I will up the amount of content, and I never pull back, because I always feel like, well, I've already committed. I've already given this message to the viewers and the listeners that this is the rate at which I'm going to come out. So I gotta keep going. And one could argue that's not the best way to live one's life, but I think it's doable. Deanna says, I'm a minister. So Ben and Mahogany, right? So Deanna says, I am a minister. In seminary, we were taught in our classes on pastoral care that if a couple or individual came to you with the same thing 3 times, you needed to refer them to folks who had degrees in true therapy. We have theology degrees, and most of us don't have a counseling degree and have no business pretending that we do. Right. So, and I think I was talking about this in the reaction video, that there are some pastoral counselors with legit licenses and degrees in counseling and therapy. So, but some don't, obviously. And there's that, yeah. Sarah says, oh no, comments. So these comments are on the comments video that I was reacting to your comments. You see what I'm saying? Because sometimes in these comment videos, I'm like, I have a question or I'll say something and then you'll comment. Anyway, Sarah says, funny you mentioned having a dream. Right. So in the last comment video, I was talking about people having dreams about me. And, I have dreams about the YouTube channels that I watch and podcasts I listen to. Funny you mentioned having a dream about you. Last night, I dreamt I was a student that you were teaching a creative writing class. But a part of my brain thought, wait, Dr. Honda mixes idioms. Is he in the right class? I think I just dreamed that because creative writing was my favorite class and I miss college sometimes. Or, you just want to criticize me and my idioms. Either way, I'm fine with it. I'm in your life. I've infected your brain. I'm in your subconscious. Success for me. Abigail says, Dr. Honda, I had a very similar experience with a pothead flatmate, right? So I was talking about what pushed me over the edge, because I was probably 25-ish or something, and I was starting to think about living on my own and not living with roommates. I liked having roommates because of the cost savings. You could save a lot of money if you share rent. And I also liked the chaos and the socializing, and I knew that once I moved out on my own, I would never do it again. But I had this person who made magic, pot brownies, and didn't tell us as we were about to eat them. And my friend actually ate one, and anyway, so Dr. Anna, I had a very similar experience, and then I was just, and there were other kind of, I don't know what you would call it, like drug issues, and so I left. Dr. Anna, I had a very similar experience with a pothead flatmate. This person was already very problematic to live with, and she was obsessed with the idea of giving people magic brownies without them knowing. It was absolutely hilarious to her. She literally wouldn't understand why it wasn't funny to me and would see me as a party pooper. Yeah, I've seen this before. There's actually a famous story with my co-host Umberto in which one of his friends watched him eat 3 with extremely high potency hash or something in a cookie, marijuana, even though he knew that Umberto has literally never smoked pot before. And, big time pot users would be super high on like half of the cookie, and Umberto had 3. And, fast forward in a little bit of time, and he's in his car, like completely freaking out. And he called 911, and the medics arrived. And yeah, I mean, it's no joke. And anyway, so I've seen this before. Now, I will say that at least in my circle, the people who use marijuana in my circle would never, ever, ever, ever accidentally drug someone or not tell someone, by the way, that has marijuana in it. So you sure you want to have that? They would never do that to anyone. But I have seen occasionally people with this kind of attitude, like my roommate at the time. And I find it to be kind of a cultural attitude. Like there's a subsection of marijuana users that will consider it that way. Or it might have happened to them and they actually invited that. They're like, oh, I had a pot brownie? Well, I wasn't planning on getting high today, but yay, let's do this thing. And it was like this fun surprise that you would have. But the inability to have empathy for others, and I think it's based on an echo chamber within certain marijuana circles, and I've seen this going back to the 80s, that marijuana is fine and it's natural and it's always fun and everyone loves it, and the only people who don't love it are party poopers and people who report having extremely bad trips on it. They must have not been the right mindset, or it must have been laced with something. And let me tell you, I've worked with a lot of people, and I have a lot of personal anecdotal experience with this as well, that marijuana can be great, and for many people it is great and fine and innocuous, or at the very least not as bad as alcohol. But there are some people where marijuana does not work for them, and they will have extremely negative reactions, psychotic breaks, panic attacks, PTSD. I've seen it. It's a drug, and it affects the brain, and it affects actually the whole body, and it has a different effect on different people. And it doesn't mean that if someone had a bad trip, they weren't in the right mindset. It just is what it is. To blame the victim somehow is, silly. So, and I'm sure y'all know this, but so I think that mindset of marijuana is awesome, it's always awesome, everyone should use it, any criticism of that is you're being a party pooper. I find that can become the basis for people literally drugging people with marijuana, thinking that they're in the right. And the reason why I want to highlight this is I feel like there's not enough pushback on that idea, because especially when you're in that when you're in those circles, when you're in your 20s or younger, and that's what old people say. Drugs are bad, okay? Like you're not supposed to be negative about that sort of stuff, because there is so much stigma and ridiculous negativity about marijuana in society that if you say anything negative about it, somehow you're like slotted as one of the old fogies who are out of touch or something. And I feel like we can recognize that marijuana is fine for a lot of people, but we also, like a lot of the people I would talk to that would have extremely negative reactions from marijuana, and they would literally have PTSD for the next 15 years about drugs or losing their mind or this sort of thing, that they wished someone would have told them that there was a possibility of that happening, and no one had ever said that to them at all. It was not in the culture. There was no indication that marijuana would be anything other than awesome. So I feel like we need to have more awareness of that. There needs to be more talk about that, while recognizing that for many people it's fine. So that's what I want to say about it, because like I said, I realized this when I was like 19 years old. I realized that marijuana for some people in some instances could be actually extremely traumatic. And I would bring it up sometimes, with people. And I started to attract people who had similar experiences where they're like, oh my God, like I went through that. I thought I was the only one. And I thought there was something wrong. People blamed me for it. Like I wasn't in the right mind space, and like I'm really kind of screwed up from it. It was a really horrible experience. And I would ask more questions, because it was interesting to me. And so, related, someone very recently was trying to get me to take mushrooms one night. This is just last weekend. And he was joking, but he was trying to make it seem like, and I wasn't interested. I'm, to be frank about hallucinogens and mushrooms and psilocybin and acid and all that kind of stuff, like I'm old now. I got better things to do, and I like my life, and I like my brain, and chances are it'll be fine, but I'm just not into that. But anyway, my friend was really trying to get me to use mushrooms one night, and he was really trying to break me down. And he's a funny guy, and he for like 45 minutes he was trying to like break down my psychology and like, are you really happy in life? And actually it's fun because as he was really grilling me to justify my life, and it was a joking kind of banter. He wasn't actually attacking me, and I actually like this about him. He does this frequently. Not mushrooms, and not drug related, but it'll be other kinds of things that he'll get really intense about. And in my response and exploration over 45 minutes with him, I thought about, am I happy? You don't, I'm not in therapy currently right now, so it's not something that you get a chance to think about. And I encourage you to think about, are you happy really? And to think about what makes you happy. And if you could change something, what would it be? I think it's important to check in with that. And so I had an opportunity to do that, because I work so much. There's not a lot of time. And I don't know, I feel like I'm at a stage in my life when the question just doesn't arise very often. So I had a chance to explore that. And the long and the short of it was I eventually landed on this place that I don't think I'd ever really fully realized, that you out there actually define my life to a large extent. Like the fact that you pay attention to this YouTube channel and people that listen to my audio podcast, when I wake up in the morning, I'm like, yeah, let's do this. Let's make content. Let's see what the people are saying, what the comments. Let's look at what's happening in the culture. This Amber Heard, Johnny Depp trial, what's going on in the news. Like, I have tremendous meaning from that, and it's not just like content creation. It feels human and real, because you contribute, you comment, you email in, it's a back and forth, and I'm also obviously with co-hosts. It just feels human and meaningful and important to me, and fun and creative and dynamic, and I don't need mushrooms to make me happy because of that. I'm high on my own podcast. I'm high on life. Failure says on the last comments video, my dog is barking. It's really annoying because the house next door has a bunch of people working on it, and my big dog doesn't understand yet that they deserve to, like, they're on their property. The big dog thinks like they're on our property because he can see them. Failure says, I bought your Take Care of Yourself hoodie to try to brainwash my colleagues at this job that was super exploitative with ridiculous hours. I love that hoodie, even though I don't like words on my clothes. Yeah, failure. I absolutely am the same with you. Even though I got this shirt, the Han Solo thing. Stacy has the Leia one. But I also don't like words on my clothes. I don't like logos on my clothes. But so before the pandemic, I basically had like 3 or 4 shirts that I just rotated every day and 2 pairs of pants. And during the pandemic, I was so bored because every day was the same and there was nothing interesting, that I started to buy clothes, and I started getting into shirts that had words on it. Of course, the swag, because when Stacy designs a shirt, we order one to see what they look like in real life before y'all will order it. And so I end up acquiring a lot of t-shirts that way as well. But yeah, now I'm a t-shirt with words on it dude, which I wasn't before. But that's hilarious that you bought that a hoodie with "Take care of yourself" to try to brainwash your colleagues at a job that was super exploitative. It's like, signal, anyone? Angela says, Dr. Kirk was right. Bald face lie and bold face lie is right. I love how me having insecurity around my idioms has now created like a 4-week conversation about bald face lie and bold face lie. I'll probably never forget now the idiom is in my brain that you can say either bald face or bold face. Personally, I like bald face for some. Bold face doesn't sound right to me, but it is, according to the internet and y'all saying it is, acceptable. The girl band show was Pop Stars and the group was Eden's Crush. Yes, Pop Stars. I would have never remembered that. And Eden's Crush. Yeah. So I was talking in the last comments video about one of the only reality TV shows I watched was this. I was like, I couldn't remember anything about it, but yeah, it was Pop Stars and it was Eden's Crush. Donna says, I feel the same way about buck naked and butt naked. I grew up with bald face lie and buck naked, and I'm always interested to see which version of each someone will use. Really, Donna? Like hey, which one, I feel like I heard buck naked when I was a kid in the 70s, and then butt naked from like the 90s forward or something. Danielle Muhammad, Tatiana says, Did Danielle ever apologize for everything she did before requesting an apology from him? Imagine being in an abusive relationship where they did 80% of the wrongs, yet they keep making you apologize. Yeah. This is a crappy username, says, and this quoting me, every single detail of a woman is scrutinized. It's so true. I was just thinking the other day that there is a lotion, a potion, an injection, or a surgery aimed at every single minuscule area of our bodies as women. Earlobes, nostrils, shoulder size, brow hair, pores, ingrown hairs, the size of your second toe, all of it is a place for insult. Yeah, and it's getting worse. It's getting worse. When you look, there's some things that were better now as a culture, like with, legalizing gay marriage or acceptance of gay marriage. The majority of Americans, regardless of political leanings, are okay with that and supportive of it, or staunch fighters for it. That's changed. That's a big change. But when it comes to this, it's getting worse and worse and worse. And as an old person, I did not grow up with that. When teeth whitening started to become a thing 20 years ago-ish, I remember thinking, why? I don't notice anyone's teeth color. Why would you do that? I guess I kind of get it. It's like when your teeth are stained or something, maybe there's a situation there that you want to help. But there are people with perfectly regular teeth. Now, people doing procedures to their body, solely fine. Darcy does a lot of procedures. Stacy does a lot of procedures. And they're entitled to that. They're fine. People can do what they want to with their own bodies. And we just have to wonder, for Darcy and Stacy, just how much of it was motivated by stigma and shame and trauma. But yeah, we have to push back on this. And I don't see enough pushback on this. Anyway, Ben and Mahogany, Linda says, my guess is that Mahogany was lacking serious intent from the beginning and the studio offered her a deal she couldn't refuse. Right, so I was hypothesizing as to what's going on with this couple, and I asked y'all to offer your own hypotheses. So Linda's saying that my guess is that Mahogany was lacking serious intent from the beginning over text, and the studio offered her a deal she couldn't refuse, money. I don't know. Based on her demeanor and behavior, I wonder if she was just playing him and collecting paychecks. She seemed to have little regard for him and his feelings and walked out on him numerous times. Yeah, it's kind of similar to my hypothesis. It's worded a little differently. But yeah, I mean, your guess is as good as mine. And I think time will tell. It'd be interesting if Ben and Mahogany will be together for, say, a year from now, for example. I mean, that would really change the perspective of what we're watching during the regular season, right? Amethyst says, I used to lie all the time online for my own safety. I don't blame Mahogany at all for not giving all her information correctly until she could trust him. They were basically speaking for a couple months. How well can you know or trust someone over chat? Yeah, agreed. And I've seen a lot of people commenting like this, and absolutely. If I were Mahogany's friend and standing next to her, she's texting this rando in the States, I would tell her absolutely the same thing. Lying that you're 23 when you're 21, I would say, why are you doing that? Because that doesn't really protect you, so to speak. So I don't know why you do that, but absolutely, yeah. If someone's like, you're chatting with someone online, you don't know who they are, and they're like, where do you live? And you're like, oh, you just make something up because you just don't want them to start sniffing around and stalking you. Absolutely, if you have to lie, I suppose it's fine. But the question remains, why are you interacting with someone that you don't trust? One, two, why not why would you profess love and you want to have their kids, and yes, I want to marry you, to someone that you don't trust? And there would be nothing wrong with Mahogany saying something like, well, Ben, I don't know you. I don't trust you. I don't know what you're up to. You could be catfishing me for all I know. And I don't know if I love you because I like interacting. There's a lot of ways that you can't have both. You can't say like, I don't know you, therefore you don't deserve me to tell you the truth. And I love you and I want to have kids with you and I want to marry you and I can't wait to see you. Like, she was saying things like that. So you can't do both. Like I said, I agree that her safety was in question for sure, but don't do that sort of stuff. How about that? And it is lying. And she, if she were 12, I'd be like, well, kids, they don't know what's up. She's 20. She was 21. She knows when she's lying, and it's not okay. It doesn't mean she deserves what she gets. I'm just saying that it was bothering me when I was watching, as you know. Mime says, I always crack up when Dr. Honda talks about his wife knowing she's the one editing it. I would be so flattered. LMAO. Yeah. By the way, she doesn't really edit it, so to speak. Maybe I said that, but that's I actually edit it, but she will give it a once over to make sure I don't say anything stupid or to make sure that the editing is all good. It's just a sort of a proofreader, if you will. But she does watch them all. And sometimes I feel terrible. Like with this video, I've been yammering for a long time and she has to watch this. And I'm like, she never complains, but, well, sometimes she complains. Tess says, while these two Ben and Mahogany are this season's most frustrating couple, I think they're my favorite Dr. Honda reaction videos because no one else has stumped and exasperated our beloved Dr. Honda like Ben and Mahogany. Is that part of the fun for y'all? Yeah. It's invigorating for me. It's not fun. It's literally, particularly in the moment, it can be really, really frustrating, as I talked about with Ben and Mahogany. Ryu says, Ben Go Home needs to be a t-shirt. Right, so I was talking about, do we need a t-shirt, Ben Go Home? There's probably some sort of copyright problem there. Plus, it feels ridiculing. I don't want to have merch that ridicules. You can go on Etsy and other places for that kind of, stuff. But that's not, I don't want to be a part of that. But it is a funny thing to think about. Ben go, what would it be? It'd be like, it would be Ben opening the, knocking on the hotel door, and that dude without a shirt with sunglasses opens up, and it's just that shot, and it's just like, Ben, go home. Yeah. I mean, I shouldn't say it. But Brielle says, I think Mahogany had immature intentions. I think she met an older guy online. She received love bombing messages and reciprocated them, and possibly was just wanting money out of it. Yeah. Yeah, it's, she might have wanted money, and she did get money out of it. She got him to give her $1,000 within the first couple months, which I believe can go a long way in Peru. I'm not really quite sure, but so there's that. And well, it can go a long way in the States. But I think and I hypothesize this as well, that she might have been legit flirting, but with no intention of actually ever meeting him. And and if that's true, which it's possible, she might have been doing that for a long time as a fun pastime. You go online, you find someone that, it's like a fantasy. You're playing a game and it's fun. And maybe there's a lot of people online who understand it's always a game. Ben did not take it like a game. It was clearly serious to him. One last says, wow, such a light bulb moment when you realize why Ben and Mahogany trigger you so much. Right, so I was talking about my middle school girlfriend. Thank you for sharing. You said residual shame about something that happened in 1984. Right, so I was like, yeah, well, that's my residual shame that happened about something in 1984. One last says, I can relate. Jess says, I've watched your videos every day for almost 2 years, and this is the first video I can relate to so hard I started crying. I was in a very similar relationship to your middle school relationship, except I was in college. I relate to your feeling of embarrassment for pursuing someone clearly not super interested in you. Yeah, well, Jess, I'm glad that you had that, ability to cry about something that hurt you. I will say that's not how I would word it, that she wasn't super interested in me. I think she was just extremely shy, one, and two, between a rock and a hard place, because her family and religion was very much against me and her being together. Having said that, I don't know, maybe she wasn't that into me. I don't know. I don't know if I went into this, but as a piece of sort of a weird turn that happened, did I mention this? I don't think I did. Because I was with her for a number of years, 2 years-ish or something. And when I went to high school, long story short, I don't know, my social horizons widened a lot. And it suddenly just hit me that the relationship with her wasn't fulfilling. And I kind of saw it for what it was, where I was 99% of the relationship was me pursuing. I broke up with her, and she was very sad. She took it hard. And I remember thinking at the time, I can still remember, I was on the bus, and the bus was, it seems like it's from a TV show, but I'm looking at her. She wasn't on her bus yet, and she was looking at me through the window crying. And I remember thinking, I guess she did like me or something. Like, and you feel bad. I mean, it's just burnt into my brain, that image. Yeah, it was interesting to disclose that too, to y'all, and even just what I just said there, because I don't usually go into that kind of stuff, but it felt relevant at the time. Ultimatum. Shanique and Zay fight, while they were doing their trial marriage. Linda says, I binge watched this show last week, and as much as I enjoyed all the drama, I found it very hypocritical. The hosts claim that they are providing these people with a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to work on their relationships, while in the meantime, they are just traumatizing a bunch of young people. One example, why do they need to see their partners dating others? Why do they need to see their partners dating other people? Yeah, I've thought about this too, because when I first learned about the premise, during the reunion of Love is Blind, I thought, I could see that. And the vision I had in my mind was, actually, I didn't think they were going to be with each other. I thought they would just be with whoever else they met, or maybe even someone that they had a crush on in their real life. Because I thought, and I still think that would be more effective, right? Because the way the show is engineered, especially this season when two couples got engaged right off the bat, you had 3 people to choose from. What's the chance that one of those people you have chemistry with? I don't know. In my head, I just thought there would be more like introspection. I think that's what I thought. I thought after they are with the trial couple and they're back with their original person, I thought that there would be more, and maybe there was, but they didn't show it. For me, I thought that they would be sitting there going, what are my feelings? Particularly the person that was given the ultimatum. Madeline and Randall fight when they were intoxicated, seemingly. Cody says, I don't know. I was in a 6-year relationship and never got into an argument remotely close to what happens on these reality shows. Are fights like this somewhat normal? If so, maybe being single now isn't so bad. Yeah, I don't know if Cody was reacting to something I often will say is that what we're seeing here is really typical in relationships. And I will sometimes say that, and when Cody made this comment that's like, I was in a 6-year relationship. I never had a fight like that. I probably should clarify when I say things like that not every couple fights like this, but it's very common. I'm usually trying to normalize it, right? To just be like, there's a lot of couples that are having fights like this, even couples that from the outside you might think are actually doing quite well. Pop says, I watched this show because I couldn't tell what was going on from Dr. Honda's analyses, and oh my God, these people drink a lot. Right, so Pop is saying that they weren't watching the show, but were watching my videos, but then watched it and discovered that, oh my God, these people are drinking a lot. Nearly every scene, they're drunk. There are so many arguments and misunderstandings that seem to be fueled by the drinking. And I thought Madeline especially seemed to have an issue with it. The scene with her friends was particularly appalling. Yeah, that scene with the friends, which must be coming up at some point, right? In the, scheduling of the reaction videos, it's pretty rough. Yeah, of course, Love is Blind is the same way. The cast members will even talk about this, how there's always booze around. Now, they don't make the individuals drink, but it's encouraged, it's freely available, because, they know that when people drink, they do more dramatic things. Love is Blind, we're still scheduling those. Nick and Danielle, Pins and Needles says, I found the fixer thing that Nick was talking about incredibly relatable. Right, so Nick was talking about, I'm very much of a fixer, and I need to, I've learned that I shouldn't do that. I need to listen more. I had to take care of my parents and younger sibling from an early age because my father was an alcoholic and died when I was 12. Right, so Pins and Needles, you're talking about being parentified. I talk about this often in the audio podcast, and it's abuse, emotional abuse that is done to children if it's past a certain threshold. And absolutely, if your father's an alcoholic and absent often, or even, problematic himself, and then your mom dies, that's going to push you into, this pushed my mom into, oh no, your father died at the age of when you were 12. This pushed my mom into severe depression. So yet that additional neglect. Now I'm in my 20s and pursuing a master's degree in social work. I have to work extremely hard to avoid jumping into fixer mode with my friends, with everyone really. Yeah, so you're getting your degree in social work, and I would look into codependency and overfunctioning. I talk a lot about that on the audio podcast. Don't look up codependency on the internet, because a lot of it is misled. They're confusing it with dependent personality disorder, which is a completely different thing. You could argue the opposite thing. In fact, I bet you a lot of you think of, maybe not you because you listen to the podcast, but a lot of people, when they hear the word codependent, they literally think it's the opposite of codependent because of the way the internet talks about it, and frankly, the way some clinicians do. But in the clinical literature, it is defined. Briefly, it is a and I describe it as a personality disorder because it really does affect one's distortions and perceptions, and it really is pervasive through their personality. It's a very hard thing to convince people that they have an issue with this, because it is what it is to them. But the way I define it as a personality disorder is that it is the belief that if they are not taking care of someone with problems, then they are worthless. There's variations to that, but that's it in a nutshell. And their only purpose in life, they're nothing, as one way to say, is they are nothing if they aren't taking care of someone close to them that has problems. So they need someone to have problems to take care of. And they don't subconsciously really want to fix the person's problems, because if they fix the problems, then the problems go away and they no longer have purpose anymore. So they're always trying to make sure the person has some problems, but they're always trying to keep the problems. I was actually talking about this in an audio episode that we'll publish next week, but I kind of discovered this way of thinking about it that I like, which is that for the codependent person, if your problems go below a certain threshold, it's not enough to distract them from themselves, because they're trying to run from their own sense of worthlessness. So the problems need to be of a certain threshold so that they can actually be engaged with it. But if the problems go high in the other person, then they blame themselves and they feel like they're worthless. So the problems need to be in this kind of sweet zone. And subconsciously, they're trying to encourage the problems. Consciously, they're trying to keep the problems down. And overall, they're trying to keep it in this zone that keeps them in that enmeshed relationship. And so when you're parentified and you're taking care of your dad, you're taking care of your mom, and no one's taking care of you, then sometimes you can develop this personality disorder where you literally believe your only purpose is to help others, and you can be very attracted to becoming a social worker. I've worked with a lot of trainees who had this background. It doesn't mean that being a social worker, you're doomed. It might actually mean that you're quite suited for it and have a lot of skills and derive a lot of meaning from it, but you can burn out very easily, because you'll have dozens of people that have huge problems, and if you believe that, and their problems will fluctuate regardless of what you do, and so if their problems get worse and you blame yourself for that, you're going to burn out. And you might subconsciously even try to encourage these people to have problems, because you need them to have problems and you don't want them to get better, because that's what you need. That's your coping mechanism. So getting therapy for this, pins and needles, is critical. Obviously, you're becoming a social worker, so I'm guessing you are in therapy already, but that would be something to work on and talk about with your supervisor. Get a supervisor that really understands this and can walk you through it, because in my experience, all trainees, or 90% of trainees will suffer from this anyway, because there's this notion that when you finally are able to see a client, there's this notion that you as a therapist are 100% responsible for everything that happens, and it's just not true. You do a job, you do the best you can, and you have a responsibility to some extent, but not as much as what is assumed. And even though the trainees will know that intellectually, and I'm telling them that, they have to kind of live through it to really start challenging the assumptions that they have about things. Anyway, so people have that problem anyway, pins and needles, but you are at risk of having that to a massive degree, and it could push you out of the profession because of burnout, and then no one wins. So, make sure you have a supervisor that understands all that. Tally says, Dr. Honda, I love your message about just listening when a partner is triggered. Sometimes all the person wants is to be heard, to be seen, to know that how they feel matters to their partner. I wish I could send this video to every ex-boyfriend I ever had, LOL. Well, I mean, you could send that video to every ex-boyfriend you've ever had. I don't know, maybe that'll work. At the very least, your current boyfriend. Sarai says, do you play the bass? I don't know why I never noticed it back there before. Yeah, so in one of my videos, I must have had my bass behind me. And yeah, I play bass. I'm not very good, but I was in a band where all I did was play bass, so I guess that made me a professional bassist for a while. I'm mainly a guitarist, and I'm not even that good of a guitarist, honestly, but the reason why it might have been behind me is because I'm actually gearing up to do music things. I don't know if I'm going to do it on this channel or whatever, but all right, y'all. Well, it's been real and fun and interesting and meaningful, fulfilling to me, as I was saying earlier. And keep commenting, and everyone out there, please take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really do.